Time for another Dirt Daily, and I am underneath Newb sock. Check out these gold skid plates. Aren't they beautiful? But I'm not here to talk about skid plates. I'm here to talk about drive shafts. This is the factory front drive shaft. It has kind of this flexi joint thing at the transfer case end and a basic tube yoke set up at the axle end. And when you put the Mopar 44 axles into a Jeep, one of the benefits of that axle is that you can reuse your stock drive shafts. So these drive shafts have over 100,000 miles on it. And I mean, a lot of times when I build drive shafts, I work with the guys at Tom Wood's Drive Shaft, especially when I'm building a Jeep. And so I reached out to him and I said, hey, I don't know that I really need drive shafts. The factory drive shafts will bolt in. And I said, is there really a problem with the factory ones? Are they really not that good? Are they prone for failure? And the answer was, oh no, they'll work until they don't. Which is the obvious way for me to get some Tom Woods drive shafts. This is the front drive shaft. It has a 1350 CV at the transfer case end and a 1350 U-joint at the pinion end, but it does have a yoke that I'm going to have to swap onto the front of the transfer case. So, remember these beautiful skid plates? Well, this one here probably should come off because I need access to the transfer case. I could probably get the yoke on, but then getting all the bolts and everything in there will be trickier. So, skid plate's going to come off, at least this one from right underneath the transfer case. I'm hoping I can get that one out without having to drop these other two, maybe just loosen them up and they'll be able to squeeze it out of there. And then I'm going to swap on the front yoke on the transfer case and put this front drive shaft in. What else? What about the rear, you're probably asking? Well, I do have a drive shaft for the rear, but I have to make some changes to the rear axle before I can put the drive shaft in. Because even though I was planning on leaving with this Jeep like in 3 days, I just found out that the ring and pinion in the rear axle does not match the front. And if you're new to off-roading, you need your four-wheel drive gear ratios front and rear to match, especially if you're running the same size tire front and rear, which most of you are. Because if you don't have matching ring and pinions, then when you put it in four-wheel drive, the transfer case can blow up, which we don't want to do that. So, the rear drive shaft is coming. It might just be a couple days. So for this Dirt Daily, we're just going to concentrate on the front one, and we're going to drop this skid plate and get to it. All right, I got the skid plate down. It actually wasn't too bad. It just kind of slid this way and came out. And then I have to remove the flange that's on the front of the transfer case. This is a 1 5/16" socket. I don't think this is the proper size, but it did work. It's pretty close. And I'm not using this to reinstall the flange. I'm just using this to remove it. So I can get that off of there. Now, this flange is kind of on the front face of the, or it's on the front output. So I think I'm going to have to get a puller, like a 2 or 3 jaw puller, to reach in there and press on the shaft and pull out the front flange. Here you can see the rear flange. The front flange is the same, and the rear will be removed as well once I am ready to put the rear drive shaft in. So, but I'm starting with the front, get the nut off, and then where's the yoke? This is the yoke. This is the yoke that I'm going to replace it with. And it actually uses a different nut. It comes with actually 2 nuts. One is metric, one is standard, so that when you reassemble your transfer case, if you don't have, like if your transfer case is metric or standard, it has 2 options. And you can't reuse the factory nut because the socket probably won't fit in there, that 1 5/16". Oh, actually it would fit in there, but it would be pretty tight. So, but we are going to reuse the new nut that comes with the kit. let's see here. Puller. There you can just see the tip of the socket that's going on the puller. I'm gonna put my impact on there, run it in, and that should slowly tighten it up and pull the front yoke off. The one thing I'm not sure about is if there will be any fluid coming out of this. So I'll probably have a little bit of a mess when it comes out. Let's see what it does. Oh, look at that. That hardly used any pressure at all. Perfect. And it didn't really make a mess either. Now my puller is stuck on the exhaust. And there's the old flange yoke. You don't need to reuse this slinger. You don't really need to reuse any of this. That's interesting. It has kind of a like big rubber O-ring down inside there. I wonder if that's reused. It doesn't look like that will work because there's not a spot on the yoke for that O-ring. But I know we're going to silicone up the inner splines there so nothing leaks, and put some Loctite on the nut. Let's see which nut we want to use here. Where did I lay them? Here they are. There's a small one. Oh yes, that seems to go on just fine. And this one does not go on, so I'm thinking it is this one, which looks to be metric, but I'm not really sure. All right, Loctite and silicone, and maybe some grease. It's time to install this yoke. This is what I'm going to call a 3-goo job. There's the grease goo on the exterior, there's some silicone on the interior of those splines, and then there's red Loctite on the nut in the socket. So we're going to start by reaching up above our head here, lining that up, and the grease on the exterior helps it just drop right through the seal, no problem. Yep, that looks good. The silicone helps seal the splines on the inside of the yoke and on the exterior of that front output shaft. And then the nut has red Loctite on it because you don't want that nut to back off. So that's going to be torqued down to 160 foot-pounds, and it should be ready to rip. The next step is I'm going to install the drive shaft to the pinion, flange, and back to the transfer case. So to do this, you're going to take the drive shaft and route it up over the exhaust. I'd have to kind of feed it in here and then get this to sit in place. I've already got the bolts ready, and I already put some red Loctite on them so they don't come loose. They start threading in. These are the original drive shaft bolts. So these are the bolts that you're going to want to find. Hopefully you put them in a bag and you marked them front drive shaft bolts. I'm just going to get all 4 of them started because I might need to kind of wiggle it around a little bit to get the other end together. Just going to get these guys started. Don't get crazy on your impact. There we go. And then the last one, you want to get this pinion end started first, I think, because you don't want the drive shaft to fall out and hit you in the head. Where on the transfer case end, it can kind of rest up on the cross member. Nice and gentle, don't get crazy. Don't get any crazier than normal, I guess I should say. Then at this end, you're gonna slide the transfer case a little so it extends. And then there are 4 little bolts. They look like this. These are like a 5/16. They're so little you might want to put your glasses on. These like a 5/16 wrench, 12-point. And you will feed those up through the yoke and into the CV. This part takes a little while because the little bolts are not exactly easy to get to with a ratchet, but I would recommend a ratchet wrench. This one's actually an 8mm and it fits on those bolts perfect. It just takes a while. There it goes. That one's tight. I really like ratchet wrenches for tightening bolts, like getting them, like say 90% tight. But especially with these little ratchet wrenches, I don't like to do the final tight with a ratchet wrench because I'm worried about breaking the ratcheting mechanism in there. So once I have them 90% of the tight, then I'll just grab a normal wrench and put that on there. And then you want to hold the drive shaft from spinning while you tighten it with the other hand. Oh, and then we can go back up front and tighten down those 4 bolts on the pinion. Just like that, Tom Wood's front drive shaft is in. Can you see the sticker? That is in and protected. I'm going to swap out the flange on the rear of the transfer case. And I think I'm going to hold out on putting the skid plate back in until I have the rear drive shaft in. I'm not going to put the rear drive shaft in until I have the rear axle fixed. That's it for this Dirt Daily. We'll see you guys next time.